Hey everyone who loves complex, provocative, and absolutely brilliant books. Today we're diving into the bottomless, chilling, and terribly beautiful world of the novel that split world literature into before and after. I'm talking about Vladimir Nabokov's Lolita. I should warn you right away. This book is not just a story. It is, if you will, a litmus test for society, a mirror that is very uncomfortable to look into. When it came out, it was surrounded by a firestorm of scandal. It was banned, admired, and hated. But decades have passed, and now we understand. Lolita is not just about forbidden passion. It is primarily about language, about the artist's power over reality, and about the tragic loss of innocence, both the heroines and the readers. In this video, I won't be recounting chapters and pages. We'll walk the tightrope of the plot, keeping the main idea in mind. Why is this so damn beautifully written? We'll look at how Nabokov transformed a dirty, repulsive subject into a model of literary mastery, and his disgusting narrator into one of the most brilliant liars in history. At the center of our attention is Humbert, a European intellectual, aesthete, poet, and, as he calls himself, a man of the finest sensibilities. And he, our narrator, confesses from the very beginning to something completely irreparable. He doesn't just fall in love. He is literally obsessed with what he calls nymphettes, girls between the ages of 9 and 14 who possess, in his opinion, a special demonic fleeting charm. And at 37, his life changes when he arrives in a small American town to rent a room. Humbert moves into the house of Charlotte Hayes. And then something happens that Nabokov describes with such precision that I still get chills. In the garden on the veranda, he sees her. Dolores Hayes, the 12-year-old daughter of the landlady, whom he immediately mentally renames Lolita. It is at this moment that the story ceases to be a mere slice of life and becomes a painful poetic confession. Humbert is essentially a poet who falls in love not so much with the girl as with his own idealized, utterly perverted image of that girl. He sees in her not a real person, but a mythical creature, the nymphette, who is supposed to heal his childhood trauma. His first and only love in youth was tragically cut short. Understand, Nabokov deliberately forces us to listen to Humbert. He uses luxurious, exquisite language to lure the reader into a trap. Every description of Lolita, her knees, her hair, her manner of speaking, is not just words. It is verbal music with which Humbert tries to justify his crime and even make it sublime. It's as if he's saying, "Look, I'm not just a monster, I'm a sensitive, tragic hero." And here our Humbert takes the first, most despicable step. He understands. To be near Lolita, he must endure her mother, Charlotte. Charlotte is a caricatural, naive, ridiculous American provincial woman who, of course, falls in love with the mysterious European. And Humbert, despising her, marries her. It is a marriage of pure, cold calculation. A marriage that he needs as the key to the locked door where his nymphette awaits him. This is incredibly cynical. And it is in this cynicism that Nabokov reveals the true essence of Humbert, an egoistic, intellectual monster. Here a crucial plot twist occurs that, I won't hide, looks like a gift of fate for Humbert. Charlotte dies in a ridiculous, tragic accident. For Humbert, this is not grief. It is liberation. Now nothing prevents him from gaining custody of Lolita. And there they are, alone. Humbert convinces Lolita that her mother wanted them to travel together. From this moment begins the most famous part of the novel, their endless, surreal journey across America. They travel from hotel to hotel, state to state, along dusty roads, past endless motels and brightly colored billboards. Personally, what strikes me most about this part is not the fact of their relationship itself, but its atmosphere. This is not a romantic road trip. It is, in essence, perpetual imprisonment for Lolita, which Humbert calls freedom. He constantly lies to her, persuades her, bribes her, and controls her every step. He fears she will run away, fears they will be exposed, fears she will cease to be a nymphette and become just a girl. Lolita, in turn, is not a passive angel. She is sassy, rude, indifferent, a typical teenager, but even more traumatized and cornered. She uses Humbert, blackmails him, demands money and freedom. Their relationship is a repulsive, yet masterfully played game in which both are victims. But Humbert is the aggressor who deprived her of her childhood and the right to a normal life. Through these endless travels, Nabokov brilliantly reveals the degradation of the American dream and its vulgarity. Fast food, identical motels, soulless landscapes. And against the backdrop of this vulgarity, a personal tragedy unfolds. Humbert, who sought ideal art in Lolita, ends up with an ordinary, dissatisfied teenager. His Lolita, his nymphette, is pure invention, a phantom that never existed. And in this lies his main, unbearable tragedy. As their life together continues, Humbert begins to notice that someone is following them. Some strange coincidences, phone calls, vague silhouettes. This part of the novel adds a detective, suspenseful element that heightens the atmosphere of paranoia. Humbert, consumed by his madness, becomes increasingly suspicious. He sees in this pursuit a threat not only to his freedom, but also to his right to possess Lolita. And then, after a long time, Lolita falls ill, and Humbert leaves her in the hospital. When he returns, she is gone. She ran away. This moment is the collapse of Humbert's entire world. Not just the end, but the crumbling of his carefully constructed, but absolutely insane reality. It is here that the man who is the shadow emerges, the playwright, screenwriter, and as it turns out, also a pedophile, Claire Quilty. Quilty is the antithesis of Humbert, his dark double. If Humbert is a refined literary monster who tries to sublimate his attraction through language, Quilty is a vulgar, practical, cynical predator who uses girls to create his works. He, unlike Humbert, does not try to beautify or justify it. Humbert realizes that Lolita ran away with Quilty, and this causes a storm in him. Not jealousy in the usual sense, but fury that someone else dared to encroach on his work of art. He lost his muse, his ideal, his precious thing. And he begins his hunt. Several years pass. Humbert finds Lolita, but she is no longer the nymphette. She is married to a simple, kind, somewhat silly veteran named Richard Schiller. She lives in poverty, is pregnant, and seems to be finally happy. It is an incredibly poignant and bitter moment. Nabokov shows Lolita not through the prism of her beauty, but through the prism of her ordinary, human life. Humbert looks at her. And then something happens that, in my opinion, is the main atonement in the novel. He sees in her not the mythical nymphette, but the human being tormented and crippled by him. For the first time in the story, he sees not his ideal, but the real Dolores Hayes. He offers her money, suggests they run away, but Lolita refuses. She has chosen her quiet, simple life. After this meeting, Humbert finds Quilty. What happens next is a kind of surreal, nightmarish retribution. The scene of Quilty's murder is one of the strangest and most memorable in world literature. It is devoid of any pathos. It is absurd, grotesque, and resembles a bad dream. Humbert, the refined intellectual, turns into a clumsy, laughable, pathetic murderer. In the end, Humbert writes this entire story in prison, awaiting trial. He writes, in his own words, to save his soul and grant Lolita immortality. Personally, one thing both shocks and delights me in this book: the power of the word. Nabokov is a conjurer. He forces us, the readers, to empathize with a monster, Humbert. We fall under the spell of his exquisite, rich, poetic language, and almost forget what he actually did. And only at the very end, when Humbert sees the real, battered Lolita, do he and we, along with him, realize the monstrous truth. Lolita is not a novel about romance but about the totalitarian power of the artist over his reality. Humbert destroyed Lolita because he wanted her to remain his invention, his eternal nymphette. He denied her the right to grow up, the right to be herself. Nabokov's main conclusion, it seems to me, is this. The most terrible crime is depriving a person of their human essence and the right to their own life. Humbert tried to turn life into art, but in the end he turned it into a tragedy. This book is iconic because it forces us to think, to argue, and to feel discomfort. It doesn't give ready answers but only asks questions, written with the most beautiful words one can find. Read this book if you are ready for a masterpiece. You won't regret it, but be prepared for the fact that after it, you will not be the same. Thank you for joining me on this difficult journey. Write in the comments what you think about the phenomenon of Humbert and Lolita. See you in the next video.